Hello, this is Eric of NotBIOS Tech and Reviews, and right now you are seeing the HDMI out to the PC. It's not quite the same quality as to my camera because I'm at 1080p. If you notice, it's actually focused on me. Out of the camera, this is not what it's going to be. It's not going to have a focus box. Of course, you can choose eye detect and everything else, but what I want to show right now is some different settings to give you an idea of how to use this camera so you can get the best experience. And that's what part of this review is. Because, for instance, some will say that you need product showcase so it doesn't blur as you move it here. I tried that. It makes no change, and I don't need to go covering my whole face like that to avoid the problem with focus. So the lovely thing here is I can see my menu. And one thing I want to do right away is look, it's not even full range video color tones. Go to full range. That's the first thing you want to do. Like, why? That's out of the package. That's what it is. Not full range. So change that if you want the best image quality possible. Dynamic range, generally I would change that to a higher number, especially at least 200, if not 400. But yeah, because it gives a little more, especially if it's bright, you're not going to be as dark against the sunlight. On auto is actually better than Sony. What you want to do is you want to go to area, right here. Normally your focus area is actually small like this, but I already changed it. But for focusing on an object, you might want to expand that to make your life a little easier. Now what I do when I actually do focus on these objects is I set myself a square and then I get rid of my focus on myself. So I'm going to go to our face detect, which I turned on, and we're going to go to off. Okay. Now what I do is I put myself in the middle of the scene. Right here is the focus point. I can raise my hands like this and I'm still the focus point here because it's where my cube is. Now watch what happens when I move back and forth. It's a lot more razor focused. And if I keep that box a little bit smaller, it's going to be even better for focus in that region. And it's not going to flutter really, I found, when you leave it in the middle so much. So this is your little focus hack for keeping better focus with this camera, which makes it very sufficient for focusing on you. If this is where I'm working and I'm showing objects, whatever I show wherever I am is in focus. How about weddings? That's one that's a bane of many different video photographers. So what you do not use is eye and face detect. You do not use that. In fact, we're going to turn off the zone completely. It's just as well because whatever's in front of the camera is basically in focus, just like product showcase, and that'll work most of the cases unless you're having people cross your camera path as your point. Or you can set up a focus cube if there's a particular point you want to be focused and not people that are going along the bottom of your scene, but maybe you're recording up here. Well, indeed, it is cropped in high speed. Watch that computer screen right up here, and you will see that it will enlarge greatly. So there is our crop in. Now, for best quality, I found like 120 frames per second to be a better slow motion. But check this out. When you do slow motion, though, there is no voice. So let's watch what happens. So here's the question, does eye detect stay on? Well, if you noticed, that the closest object focus does indeed stay on when there is no detection. So at high speed, that works. So let's check out eye detect. Right now, the audio you're hearing is connected to my Vocaster 2 and line output to my camera. The line output from the Vocaster is very, very clean. I have the camera at -30 for mic, which is the lowest possible, because if I had it higher, there'd be more hiss. Let's listen to the silence just for a moment. Okay, now let's connect to the task cam. So let's listen to this silence. Okay, I don't know if that was any better, but you'll be able to find out on playback compared to the camera itself. I do enjoy using it, but it is extra weight and extra size to the camera. Though I can use the camera to actually power the task cam, which is really cool, or I can use battery power right here. That'll improve the audio over connection this wise, where I can connect directly to XLR. And I can also connect directly to 3.5mm. The fun thing is you pretty much have to experiment with your settings on this side to literally get which works best. Because this here is a mess of settings. But luckily we do have monitoring through our settings right here. I forgot to point out the most obvious thing. This digitally connects to your camera. You need no other cable. This connects to your hot shoe. Yes, your hot shoe, not a cold shoe. As you can see, there are the pins to connect directly to your camera and give you up to 24 bits of audio to the camera, which means you should technically have less hiss, especially when you boost your audio. Talk about battery power. There are different ways I can connect this camera. I got this dummy battery that connects to the wall. However, when I use this, if I happen to use this plug-in wall power one and connect to the camera directly, the audio port to the camera itself has noise, and I don't like it. The task cam seems to be protected from that noise. Now, the best way to use a dummy battery is via USB. USB dummy battery. This particular one is an Anker 13K dummy battery. I can't find this in the US anymore, but I also have a 10,000 one coming in, which is a bit smaller and lighter than this one. And voila, secure. And I can connect this on the back of my camera, facing me, connected. So let's do that right now. Here's my camera with the dummy battery powered on and my camera powered on and the task cam. Of course, normally my microphone would be connected down in here, but right now I'm connected to an audio interface to record to my PC. I also have this wrist strap that the more you pull on it, so if the camera were to drop and it's holding it, it actually holds onto the camera and it disconnects nice and simple, just like that. Otherwise, it holds on, no problem. Awesome little setup for a person wanting something simple. Little camera cage here, connected right there. You can see with one little connection point. Awesome, and the battery, of course, is absolutely secure. Smaller battery coming in, of course, lighter weight. So you might wonder, how does it work for making movies and stuff? Well, it works quite fantastic. The details, when I did HDR, Dynamic Range 400 was really spectacular. Actually, I'm amazed because when I did my original review, Dynamic Range 400 was almost washed out in terms of the darkness of tones of different things, but it makes everything so pop.
Jenga? Yes. I even have the Jenga already set up and ready to go. Enjoyed by the young, the old, the infirmed, and even horror characters. Buy Jenga now in these
And the coolest part here is I record at 4K, 29.97 FPS, 16:9 ratio, long GOP, H.264, MP4 at 100 megabits per second. And I used a film profile, not even F-Log. And that's what gave me that image quality. Freaking awesome. For the movie, I used the Fujinon 23mm lens. You can use the 33 as a replacement where you don't have to be as close to the subject, or you could be further away at least. This gives nice separation of the background, as you see. Now let me show you a bit of footage from other stuff I did with this camera. That means it requires no phantom power, and if you use this with a phantom power microphone, it's not going to get any sound at all. On the back, let's look at some of the specifications. The one thing this claims is 30 decibels of volume, and here's our XLR cable included. Oh, and you might be wondering, well, right now you're not centered, or if I wasn't centered, I'd just do my usual. And then I get where I want to be in the camera, frame myself, and verify. So, yeah, does this work? It's not losing me, unless I get way out of the scene. Ha, it lost me. So right now we're in photo mode. Now check this out. We can track this one card even if I flip this in front. It's tracking the memory card. So that's kind of cool, but this is photography, not video. Even if I move my camera, wiggling it around, it still tracks the object. This would be cool if we actually had it for video, but it's not a feature, at least not yet. Now if I want to switch my focus to this object, here we go. And it can track that again in photography. Though setting this up can be a bit of a hassle in your menu. So there's that object, that problem. Now if I want to track my wrist, and one thing I could of course do is take pictures of what I'm tracking. So let's track this. Now if I want to take pictures of this, I can go wherever and it tracks, or the memory card, and take pictures. That's where you're seeing. Let's get actually a better focus on the memory card. So it's in the cube. That's where you see people taking photos, and it's keeping really good track. Oh, I lost focus there. So yeah, kind of cool. And let's see this in the menu where this is. So I did my autofocus mode to wide tracking. We can do a single point where it's just a single point like anything else. We can also, of course, change it to a zone. So it's this little tiny area here for tracking. I'm not sure how this works because I haven't used this yet, but let's see what happens. So it tracks within the zone. And again, if I'm out of the zone, it's not going to track that. So keep it in the zone, it will track within that small little area. Now let's get to testing this as a webcam to zoom, which could be limited to 1080p, mind you. But let's check that out. Apparently when I was on the meeting with the Fuji guy, it works properly, but I just can't get proper audio for myself, apparently, using this as a webcam. Beats me. I tried. Not even Zoom. We're using Zoom right now. So there's that. And right now I'm using the task cam. I removed the task cam, still the same. Basically I have to use an external audio interface because that's the only way I've managed to get proper audio recorded. One thing we must note is the audio will misalign from the video, at least that's my experience. I added a 50 millisecond delay when I used the capture card and my audio interface through OBS, and that lined up my audio fine. So if you have that problem, you might want to experiment, then you have your delay set and you are good to go from then on. For me, I use a pro lens, use my XF 23mm. It's a little bit close. If I were doing selfie and holding my camera, I'd go with the 18mm. Now, I'm only about 3 feet away from the camera. I might want to use an 18mm instead if I was doing a selfie thing like vlogging and stuff like that. This is a little bit too zoomed in for that particular purpose. Make sure you get the newest firmware. Get the newest firmware for your lenses. This is the waterproof lens. So if you see XF23 or 33 or 18, make sure it's the water resistant WR lens. The older ones were not the WR, not the water resistant, so it could be different quality. So be mindful of what you're getting for this camera. Link in the description below to my previous review so you can see a bit of those oddities like the ports on this. And about the micro HDMI being not as good as the regular HDMI. Like, look at that difference in size. This is the size of micro HDMI that goes to camera, and this is the regular HDMI. So yeah, I use an angle HDMI because if I use one that's out like this, that's a lot of force on the port. So I recommend using an angled one. Building your own cooler, something I wouldn't really recommend because it's really kind of complicated. It's 80 millimeters wide. I actually cut this, as you can see, by 50 millimeters high this way. The holes are pretty much centered in here, but there's a little bit of difference in gap distance apart. This is where you're going to have to measure yourself. And the screw size is M3. They're pretty darn small, and you have to play around with the length to figure out what makes it tight. I'm not going to go through all the small little details, but here's the thermal pad. This particular one is an Arctic 1.5 millimeters, which I actually used to mount to the back of the camera. Now, one thing about using a cooler to the back camera, whether it's the one you buy or building your own, you're going to have a problem that the camera screen, you can't flip to the back of the camera anymore. If you drop your camera on the side, prepare to break your screen. So be careful, and that's why I took mine off at the moment, and that's why it's here. Now, with it being 80 millimeters wide, we can mount an 80 millimeter fan. I have an Noctua, and I can take advantage of these little holes at the back, which kind of does not cover the whole entire thing. And then I got a small little battery bank, and I got a controller. High. Probably could hear that fan on high, middle, and low. So this Noctua fan, I got a bunch of different adapters because the smaller fans that you can buy at 50 millimeters, that is the same size as this, and the 40 millimeter version I can get is super freaking insanely loud. So I got a small battery bank. Then I got this other adapter that takes my 4-pin to USB, and then I got this USB adapter with a controller with one of my 50, I believe it was my 50 millimeter fan. So, complicated mess? Yeah, kind of so. It required a little more spending, a little more junk than I actually wanted. But yeah, it's possible to build your own cooler. Does it work with fan? Yes, it does. Without a fan, not very effective, because at least not in a room that's hot, because you need airflow to cool off a heatsink. This is Eric of NotBIOS Tech and Reviews. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to NotBIOS Tech and Reviews and help this channel grow. And if you're subscribing right now, or already subscribed, then you, yes, you are awesome. Until next time, if you want to see more details, such as the different profiles, make sure you watch the actual original review I did. That'll be linked. I guess I'll pin that in the comments too. Until next time, have yourselves a most wonderful day.